So, new directions in leadership research. Okay, what kinds of questions are being asked in relation to leadership? Number one is obviously gender. Okay, it turns out that, look at this, in 2017, women made up about 47% of the workforce. About 50% were held by women. That's not bad. I mean, it depends on the industry and everything else. Turns out that women tend to incorporate more participative behaviors. They're more interpersonally oriented, tend to have different styles than men tend to, okay? And the leadership styles that men and women display is often a reflection of the stereotypes of gender roles. So the stereotype is then shown in the way that they behave. Okay? So we find, though, that in some industries there is definitely a leadership glass ceiling. So here we've got, let's say, for example, in executive, administrative, managerial types of areas, about 43% of employees are women, but at the highest level it's only 3 to 5%. University faculty, about 40%, but when you get up to the levels of presidents, it's about 19%. Law associates, about 42% of the lawyers are female, but only about 16% are partners. Okay? Or in the U.S. government, 25% of the Senate at this point in time, 29% of the House, 0% of the presidency, and 100% of the vice presidency. So it's a number. At least you got 100 in there somewhere. Okay. CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, only 8.8%. Look at this, 90% of companies have at least one woman in senior management, but the most common position for the senior management is HR director, which again is exactly in tune with the gender stereotypes. So, some believe that women have an advantage in leadership because they tend to be, again, these are gender stereotypes, tend to be more inclusive, interpersonally engaged, nurturing, and should be able to be better leaders in this way, okay? So you get a lot of women managers in medicine and health, all right? Which is exactly where these types of behaviors would be, in fact, valuable, okay? These types of behaviors are not valuable in banking, okay? They're just not. Therefore, you don't see a lot of female leaders in banking, okay? So, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Culture. Ooh, this is important. And I had already said that in some countries, autocratic leadership style is by far the preferred style. And in other countries, it's not, okay? In many parts of the world that, like, say, for example, I prefer to make my own choices. I want to make my own choices. But people from much more collectivistic cultures, they are perfectly satisfied. In fact, they're happier if someone they trust makes choices for them, okay? Which is where an autocratic leadership style would be incredibly effective as long as you trust your leader, okay? So the accepted, expected leadership styles is going to vary across culture depending on a lot of factors, okay? So here was a big project that was done. 61 countries looked at leadership in individualistic cultures versus collectivistic cultures, and it was very clear that the traits, again, the personality characteristics, the traits that were necessary to be an effective leader differed in different cultures. Okay? If leaders have more international experience, they tend to be better. Look at this. Leaders' global experiences impact their ability to think strategically, and in fact, leaders whose international experiences were in places and cultures that were completely different from your own culture were the best. Okay? So there's something about seeing the world from another perspective that makes you more effective at your own. Okay? So here they did 59 leadership traits. That what they were trying to do was get the leadership prototype. Remember when we had the implicit leadership theory? And there was a prototype of what equals a good leader. So they looked at the prototypes, for all practical purposes, the prototypes that people had of a good leader. And there was nothing that emerged across 8 different countries. There's nothing that emerged in the top 5 consistently. Nothing. Okay? But if you broke these cultures up into Eastern versus Western, or more specifically, individualistic Western cultures, collectivistic Eastern cultures, though there are other aspects of these cultures, obviously, that's the big one, okay? And it turned out that in the cultures that were more Western or individualistic, determined was a very typical descriptor, adjective, to describe an effective leader. But those from more collectivistic, intelligence was much more prototypical of what would be in their prototype. And finally, one of the much more recent, and I think it's just a fad, to be honest. I mean, we'll see, all right? If in 5 years, will this thing dominate the literature? I hope not, okay? But maybe I'm wrong, okay? So, emotional intelligence is a key factor in determining who's an effective leader. And emotional intelligence is got a lot to do with, an emotionally intelligent leader will create bonds. They'll understand where you're coming from. They'll have a lot of empathy, shall we say, okay? Because they are able to be in tune with their subordinates, they can create transformational behaviors. I don't know, maybe. I mean, check it out. I gave you some links to check it out. So check it out a little bit. Convince me. I mean, is it a fad, or is it here to stay?